Let's start the podcast in a good way. Hey, welcome to episode 2 of the Flippin Awesome Podcast. My name is Alan.
I'm Luke.
This is Luke. He is my brother. We are business partners. We are friends.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of life together. I think that's I don't know.
Dun, 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 dun. Shout out when they're actually
Yeah, but no, so this is episode 2. Last time we had episode 1, we really just talked about the concept of the whole podcast being about faith, family, and flip phone life. Kind of set up exactly what we're looking to do here, how we ended up at the spot that we ended up at, and why we're even speaking to you guys, why we set up a channel, all of that kind of stuff. And we had said in our last podcast that today we were really going to address the topic of how to navigate this world with the dumb phones that we have. And so we're calling the title of this, How to Navigate a Smartphone with a Dumb...
No. He's so dumb that he can't read. Actually, how to navigate a smart world with a dumb phone.
Take 2.
Because people know, no, this is great. People know how to navigate a smartphone too well. And so I think
That's true.
people actually need to understand how to navigate a dumb phone in a smart world. And so we're going to address the buts today. We talked about we're big butt guys, B-U-T.
Yep.
Because a lot of people said, well, I would really love to do this, but. And so we're going to eventually get there. But the first thing I think that we just kind of wanted to hit on is, like the smartphone is, I think a lot of people feel like it's a have to. It's a have to have this. It's more efficient. It's more effective. It makes things faster. It becomes like a necessity. But I think we're kind of pushing back on that and saying, you know, on the dumb phone, the flip phone life, it's a get to. We get to choose differently. We get to have a more scaled back, simple life. And there's a way to do it. And I think we should just kind of start off with a little fun fact check. So facts about just smartphones and addressing just the question of, do smartphones, do they save you time?
Yeah, I think that's probably what we'd coin as like the elephant in the room is smartphones or iPhones or Android, whatever, is just the idea that they are an efficiency tool. And so it's like, well, something that's efficient saves you time. Yeah. And so I think Luke and I are here, you know, not as attorneys to argue, no, it doesn't save you time.
Yeah,
but
we'd be terrible attorneys.
We'd be terrible attorneys. But just to navigate the question of, does having a smartphone save you time? And we believe the answer to that is no.
Heck to the no.
Heck to the nizzo. And so let's go into a couple of stats because everyone loves stats.
Yeah, we got our handy-dandy papers here. If you see us looking down, we realize that we aren't smart and we are dumb sometimes, so that's why we write things down.
We write things down.
So we're not perfect and we're not super crazy intelligent. We're intelligent enough to read, other than Alan when he tried to read that title.
That's true.
But, yeah, so the first thing, if you wanna hit some of these facts, that'd be good. And I think they're really good.
Yeah, let's go to it. So, number 1, Americans spend an average screen time of 5 hours and 25 minutes per day.
What?
Which means, and then they check their phones over 58 times a day. And so, and this is another weird one, they touch their phones 2,600 times a day. And so, the funny thing about that is we did like a little, kind of like broke down what the hours and minutes of that are. And so it's 22% of your day. So if you take a 5 hours and 25 minutes of screen time a day, break it over a 24-hour day, that's 22% of your life or 82 days a year. So 82 days out of the year, people are logging screen time. And that's smartphone screen time. That's not even considering like I was on my tablet or I watch TV or I watch whatever. That's how long people are on their smartphones throughout the day, which is wild. We also did a breakdown where we're like, okay, 22% of your life. let's say you're 20 years old.
Yeah. Say I'm 20 years old right now.
Yeah. Average life expectancy.
Lay out my life.
You have, I don't even know what the average life expectancy is. 70-something years? 76.
I think 76 sounds great.
That sounds great. 76 years. If you broke 22% of that, that's 12 years of your life on the screen from age 20 until you die. And so, and Luke and I were talking about how funny it was. It's like, that's the same idea.
The worst sales pitch ever.
It's like the worst pitch is like, hey, we got an idea for you. Be on your phone from now until 12 years from now, 24 hours a day, no sleeping, no eating, no anything. And if we ask that to someone, people will be like, no, you're ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no way.
But that's actually what people are doing right now. It's just spaced out over the rest of their years. And
that's almost more sad. I feel like if you had 12 just terrible years, but then you got like 40 or however many left of just like completely untouched time, that'd be great. But I think whenever you just kind of tease it out throughout every single day, you really just miss out on pretty much every moment. You're missing out on something, right? It's just kind of disguised a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next one. Estimated 311 million smartphone users will be in America by 2025, which is wild. I remember in school like studying that we had 300 million people in America. Now, population has grown a little bit, but still kind of wild to hear that number. Luke, you hit the next one.
Yeah, like I said, I think we'll hit these last two here. And this is just kind of more referencing maybe people who are overly using and extremely excessive in regards to like the amount of time on phones. But I found this just super interesting. It says like of the Gen Zers specifically, it says that 26%, so 1/4 of them spend over 9 hours on their phones daily. And then back to the touching the phone, the top 10% of all cell phone users actually touch their phone 5,427 times. Like that's just...
Yeah, I mean, it seems nearly impossible to get to that if we tried.
And that's just crazy. And it's like that, that's unreal. Think about trying to touch something 5,000 times in one day. Yeah. Like that's pretty absurd, but that's just a little wanted to start the podcast just putting kind of the spotlight on some facts. We did some research, we looked into a bunch of articles, and we found those to be just interesting, just to shine a light on like, hey, I think we can say to addressing just maybe the elephant in the room. I don't know why I always thought it was the white elephant in the room.
Yeah, you always say the white elephant.
So the white elephant in the room here is...
you know what it is you're mixing the white elephant Christmas tradition. Or I think it's called
the white elephant.
So white elephant in the room, white
just
elephant
went
in the room.
off. Ping. Yep. All right, good. But yeah, so it's addressing that is, hey, do smartphones, do they save you time? And I think if we took an honest assessment at those things we just listed off, the answer would be no. Yeah. And there's proof of that.
Yeah. For sure. And it even gets into, I think that like this whole topic of today really talking about like how you navigate this smart world with dumb phones hits down on like the issues that we see, like even like the strangeness of a phone in our culture. So if you were to look at me and my life in this world, you would probably say you're a freak. Because I have a flip phone and it seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but we've actually heard this analogy before about smartphones, and I believe this was from the company Lightphone or an article someone wrote or someone responding to it, and they talked about this concept of smartphones not being tools anymore, but instead that they're like appendages, and they talked about this, what they call the hammer analogy. And so the hammer analogy is this, it's a hammer is a tool. And so it is a tool, if you guys didn't know. You go into the toolbox, you take the hammer out, you nail in the nail, and then you put the hammer back. And so you have just successfully used a tool, a hammer. Yeah. And they were like, now think about how weird it would be if you took the tool out, the hammer, you nail in the nail, you look at the hammer, you touch the hammer, you start rubbing on the hammer, you start scoring the hammer, you sleep with the hammer, you shower with the hammer, and you put the hammer on the toilet seat as you're there, and then you check on it every few times, and then you drive with the hammer. It would be weird, and
then you hammer yourself with the hammer.
I mean, but I'm saying, but literally, it would be so strange. That's such a strange picture to have, but that is what we are doing with a smartphone, and that's what we both had experienced, is that we were living with this thing, doing life with this thing. I was, and like people spend more time with their smartphone than they do their spouse. They spend more time with their smartphone than they do their kids, and than they do anything else.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's just one of those things where like we wanted to frame this picture of like, yes, it is weird and seems weird to navigate this world with a dumb phone, but if we really look at the flip side of that, when Luke and I have lived the way that we have over the last several years, and we think that our life is really good and healthy, it's strange for us to see other people navigating the same way that we used to. When we used to just have the phone on lock as another limb for us. And so I think that's really kind of like, the topic of the things that we wanted to express today to kind of set up our conversation. And really, I think that this conversation, when you start looking into like some of the details in the research, and you start thinking about, even as we have looking up some of the resources that people have on just the negative portions of technology, like unhealthy technology. There's a couple resources and things that that we have actually personally watched or read that we actually think were great to plug into this. One of them is this book that's about an author called, his name is John Mark Comer, and it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And Luke, you actually pulled a couple of quotes from this book that I was going to just have you read. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's see if I can read. I won't learn from you here. So, it's a great book too. If you ever get it, it's Ruthless Elimination of Hurry: How to Stay Emotionally Healthy and Spiritually Alive in the Chaos of a Modern World. And so it was just super foundational, I think, for both of us, even in continuing to choose to kind of live the flip phone, the faith, the family life. But the first thing that he said, talking about the phone, is that your phone doesn't actually work for you. You pay for it. Yes, it works for a multi-billion-dollar corporation in California, and not for you. You're not the customer, you're the product, and it's your attention that's for sale, along with your peace of mind. So that really just kind of sums up, like you said, the phone doesn't work for you, and that you're the product. That was really good. There's actually a movie, I think, that like visually puts this into play that does a really good job. It's called The Social Dilemma.
It's like a Netflix documentary.
It's a Netflix documentary. I kind of coin it as like, it reminds me a lot of like the Inside Out. Have you seen Inside Out, like the kids movie that explains like how the mind works? It kind of does that in a documentary setting for how social media and the iPhone and things like that really kind of shape the way in which our brains work and our body works and how we respond and why we feel like it has to be a part and appendage of who we are and why we can't get away from it. I actually found it really interesting. I don't know if you remember when watching this, what struck me most was the fact that a lot of like big time CEOs and people that were a part of like the foundation and framework of building the technology and building these devices actually said like the crazy thing is like they wouldn't allow their kids to have smartphones. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was like the Twitter CEO basically was like, I'm not going to, he like doesn't have, I don't know if it's that he doesn't have Twitter, but it's just like he doesn't have social media. He was not willing to become to use the beast that he created. You know? And it's really what I think a lot of those techs have. Like those people have realized that like they're sending their kids to private schools that don't allow smartphones, and they're like not letting them have social media. And it's like, wait, you were actually one of the people who made this,
that created it,
and even you don't think it's good.
Yeah,
so.
and even then they say like they created something that they felt like it's like you can't, like it knows more about you than you know about yourself. So I think that's just obviously just so true. But that's one thing I definitely just recommend. Just a really cool resource, really cool documentary as well. The second thing John Mark really kind of talked a lot about, and which we'll kind of expand more on and tease out, he said like the whole point of his book basically is that the solution to an overbusy life is not more time. It's to slow down and to simplify our lives around what really matters. So I'll read that again. Good. The solution to an overbusy life is not more time. It's to slow down and simplify our lives around what really matters. Yeah. And I think like that is like the tug and the pull, like the tug of war of, I feel like people have smart devices, smartphones, because they feel like if I have this, then I'm going to get more time back. But really, like, it's pulling us in the opposite direction, and we have to really just take an honest assessment of our lives. And so I think there's like 3 questions that kind of came to my mind when I read that quote that I thought were just really good, that I wanted to kind of shine a light on. One of them is this, in this moment right now, is just stopping and having to ask, like, hey, what am I doing? Specifically right now in regards of with our phone, like, what am I doing with my phone and with my time with my phone? The second question being, who am I becoming? Like, who am I becoming because of what I'm choosing to do? And then the third question being, what am I going to do about it? So to answer those, and if you want to, chime in, feel free. But to make it simple, I felt like I got to the point, and like I said, where when I had to take an honest assessment of what I was doing, to simply put it, it was I am wasting time.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm wasting time. Who I'm becoming as a person because I'm wasting time is I'm becoming extremely distracted. I'm becoming extremely anxious. I'm becoming unhappy. I think that I remember I used to have a very interesting job before we joined together. I actually worked for an incredible company, but what my job started off is as I dressed up in a big furry green alien costume. His name was Jiggy. He was awesome. I'd run around, spray people with toilet paper, pie people in the face. It was great. Shout out Remix Education.
That's right.
But I got the opportunity to speak to a lot of audiences of people, and my favorite thing to talk on was I'd go to high schools and I'd just talk a lot about, like, mental health was a big thing that they invited us to speak on. Yeah. And I always made sure to bring up the phone because 95% of the audience was checked out on me talking because they were on their phone already. And I would ask the question that said, hey, so I have an honest question about, your phone. Like, obviously it's an issue. Obviously, I even read some stats to them, kind of like we read earlier. I said, honest question, raise your hand if you have an iPhone. And, like, I'd say 99% of students would raise their hand. And then I'd say, okay, now raise your hand if you have an iPhone, but you hate your iPhone, but you feel like you can't get rid of it. And almost every single hand stayed up. Yeah. And it was just really,
maybe like a few.
Yeah. It was just really eye-opening to me to realize, like, hey, a lot of people have these, and what they're becoming is they're becoming distracted, they're becoming unhappy. They can't really describe what they're feeling and why they're feeling it, but they feel stuck. Yeah. And so that really kind of gets to that last question of, this is what I'm doing, and this is who I'm becoming. What are you going to do about it? So I'll let you kind of hit on what do you do about that?
You change or you don't. But I mean,
all right, and that's our podcast.
And that's our podcast.
For today.
We'll see you guys next week.
We'll see.
But no, it really is.
But it's that simple.
It's that simple. You either the thing that you can do regarding this topic is you can change or you don't, and of course you can change habits with your device that you have if you do have a smartphone, and it's like, or you can not change. You can also change devices like we did. I actually believe that's one of the best ways to change because, one, I've done it and it's been extremely healthy. One of the best things I've ever done decision-wise. But it really is that simple. You either change your habits or your habits will change you. And so, and I think that's actually really interesting because one of the things that Luke and I were talking about when it comes to this topic is just like, how extreme of a stance do you need to take when it comes to changing? Because I think that we can pretty easily just define based on your remix story of just, okay, 99% of people raise their phones and majority of those hands remained raised when you said, how many of you guys feel stuck and don't like it? Yeah. It's really weird. I mean, it's really weird that so many people would hate the thing that they have. And, it's like it's like an unhealthy relationship. Like if you're like, oh, I love them, but like I hate them so much, they're super abusive. You'd be like, wait a minute.
If you had a good friend around you, they'd say, hey, drop that person.
Leave this relationship.
Leave it. Get out of there.
Yeah. But we have all justified
and conditioned ourselves
to have this. They're like, it's okay. And like, well, I mean, like we can do this and we can do that. And so, and the funny part about this is Luke said, and you can talk about the articles, he went into a deep dive when he was going into some of the research on articles that were encouraging people to not have a smartphone or to navigate smartphone life in a healthy way, and you can tell us your findings.
Yeah, basically I read like 10 articles, which is more articles than I've read in my entire life, because I have the reading level of Holes, the book Holes.
It is a good book.
Stanley Yelnats. I think it's a 6th grade reading level, and I remember when I tested in high school that it said like your reading level, and one of the books that it recommended was Holes.
There you go.
So
it's a great book.
So I read that level reading, but I read 10 articles, and the funny thing about all 10 articles that I read was there was not one article that said break up with it, like get rid of it, remove it, cut it out. All of them were like kind of in a way talking about, hey, learn how to parent it. Hey, learn how to put boundaries up. Hey, learn how to tame this thing. And none of these like researchers and people who are also pro, hey, there's an issue, we need to solve this, said, hey, you just need to cut it out. You need to replace this. You need to remove it and upgrade. And I think on our end and with our story, the more we continue to walk and live kind of against the grain, so to speak, specifically with navigating faith and family with the use of a simpler technology and a simpler device, we realize more often than not, if people were honest with themselves, that there needs to be more voices that say, hey, that's bad, cut that out.
Yeah.
And the people that we look to be those voices a lot of times shy away from it.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that you told me, you said, man, I read 10 articles and like not one of them told me to like not have my smartphone.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, I've heard 100 sermons and not one of those sermons told me to get rid of it either. And so,
that's actually really good.
And I think it's funny because it's like, I mean, hey, I have a lot of friends that are pastors. If you're out there watching, love you. But I'm like, but it is funny to me that it's like, when it comes to an issue like this, a lot of the people who even have the leading voices to say or encourage people, whether it is, from an article standpoint or from YouTube or from the pulpit of a church, they actually have the device themselves. I know maybe one pastor with a dumb phone in my circle and network, and everyone else. And what I realized whenever that thought came to my mind was that a lot of pastors don't know. Like, they don't know what it's like to navigate and teach their people on that because they have had a smartphone themselves. And so it becomes really hard to be able to say, hey, this is healthy, this is good, whatever. We have become so good at putting guidelines up to try to control what's there. And I think that is good for certain people in certain circumstances. Yeah. But to hit on these, like those articles and all that stuff, Luke and I tried it. Like we tried it. So for the people who have tried it and who can't tame those devices, who can't put them in timeout, who can't parent them, then what do you do? And I think that the answer is you cut it out. Yeah. You get it out of there. You take a more aggressive approach to it. And I just think that there are not enough people looking at this very serious issue that really needs, in my opinion, aggressive action taken for people to stick up for the healthy side of things, to cut it off. And I just don't think there's enough voices saying that. And we always talk about like how it's funny. It's almost like trying to tame a wild animal. And I think that sometimes you just can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to like walk around the streets of Lexington walking a tiger, because that tiger's probably, if it's having a rough day, it's just going to devour something.
That's true, though.
Yeah, but it's it's not a puppy, it's a tiger. So I think phones, we downplay it though. But it's like, it's so cute and it's never, it's okay, and we try to like justify everything. But the reality is like you said, it's, hey, if you can tame it, then good job. And I'm not you, and we're not you. But for the 95% of people that can't tame it, you have two choices. It is, hey, you either change or you don't change. And talking about cutting it off, it really is you treat the issue with seriousness, like cancer, so to speak. Like if cancer is in your body and you go to a doctor and they say, hey, there's a tumor in your body and it is damaging your health, it's stealing your life, it's taking away time from who you are, they're going to give you one solution. It's going to be aggressively attack it or cut it out. They're not going to say, hey, well, let's just see what happens for the next few months, next year, next several years, and like come and like let's recheck it and let's do like very minor changes. Like it's gonna
let's monitor it. Let's put some guide rails up, and they're gonna say let's aggressively remove it.
Let's aggressively
let's
cut
use
it.
radiation. Let's use chemotherapy. Let's try to shrink this. Like let's try to do everything we can to get this out.
Let's replace it. Like let's remove this piece that's infected, and let's get you a new whatever, right? And I think that really is where we're speaking on as we've talked to more people. I feel like the people that can tame their phone to better their faith and better their family or their work balance, like they're doing it.
Yeah.
And bravo to you.
Kudos to you guys.
That's just not us, and that's not the majority of the population. So I think the bad news about it all really is that time flies. Like time flies fast, and there's been a lot of time that's been wasted personally in my own life, personally in your life. Like we've wasted a lot of time. But the good news is we're the pilot.
Yeah.
Right? You're the pilot of your own life. You know where you want your plane to take off and where you want it to land. And you may have like got the wrong coordinates. You may have been flying in the wrong direction. And the beautiful invitation for all of us every single day we wake up is if we got breath in our lungs, we can do one to two things. We can change or we can't. And so let's let the past inform where we're at and say, hey, I'm the pilot of this flight and I want to land over there. Yeah. I don't want to be wasting time. I want to be purposeful. That's what I want to be doing. Who I want to become is not distracted. I want to become someone that's undistracted. Yeah. I want to become someone that's not an anxious presence. I want to become someone that's present in the moment. And what am I going to do about it is I'm gonna do something extreme. I'm going to get aggressive with approach. Yeah. And that kind of leads us to really our pitch to people is if you've tried this, we may say the best thing that you can do so that you can, get your time back and save your time is to learn how to navigate a smart world, not phone.
Yeah, smart world
with the dumb phone.
I said it so confidently. I was like, navigate a smartphone with a dumb world.
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't really work.
It didn't make sense. But to do that, as I said, like 3 times there, like there's always going to be a pushback. Yeah. And the pushback, as we mentioned last week that we're going to get into, is addressing the butts, like the big butts, like the B-U-T butts.
Yeah. Luke always makes sure to emphasize the B-U-T.
Yeah, because
I can't just say we're butt guys and then just leave it linger. You gotta make sure B-U-T. But seriously, it really is. Whenever we meet people and they come to find out that I, Alan Warford, have a dumb phone, a flip phone. It majority of the times, and this might be slightly exaggerated, but only slightly, and maybe not 90% of people. It is maybe 80%, 85. Maybe I'm like rounding up a little bit, but like 8 out of 10 people, 8.5 out of every 10 people say, "Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I would do that, but blank." Now, whether they're being serious or not, maybe they're just trying to make me feel good, like, "Oh, I would do that, but blank," and they're trying to
sorry soul.
Yeah, they're trying to connect, but like
that's probably what they're doing.
Maybe, but 8 to 9 people out of 10 will tell me that. Well, they'll say, "Hey, I would do that, but blank," or "I would love to do that, but blank." And I can tell that a lot of people are actually very serious when they say that. They're the people that are the high schoolers in the bleachers, but they're 35-year-old men that are looking at me saying, "Hey," they're raising their hand saying, "I have an iPhone and I hate it." Yeah. And they're like, but then what they do is like, "But do you, okay, well, hey, I've got a solution for you." And then they're like,
"Nah, I'm good.
Nah, I'm all right. Everything,
I'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. I'll tame it." And then I think that like at a certain point in time, Luke and I I think that we're here not to make anyone feel bad for what they do. We're here to speak to the people that have tried to tame their phone that could not tame it. And we're here to tell you that like, there's this expression or this like analogy that says like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is right now. And so I think
let's plant some trees.
So I think for people who have navigated trying to tame their smartphones and been unsuccessful, I'm here to say, hey, the best, and Luke's here to say, you're here too, man.
I'm not here, man.
Luke's not here.
Alan's just here. I'm just here for moral support.
That's true. No, but we're here to say now is the best time. Yeah. Don't live in the past of like, hey, I could have done this sooner. My marriage has struggled so much. My kids have not seen me. I'm feeling discouraged and down. We're here to say like, hey, there is hope for tomorrow if you make that decision today.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And back to like those questions of like, what am I doing? Who am I becoming? What are you going to do about it? Like, I think it's really hard for people to just admit that, hey, I'm weak in this area. Like, I think like vulnerability is seen in our culture as like a weakness. But I think like, what I love about even scripture, as we kind of mentioned, like faith is a big deal for us. Like, it's through our weaknesses that we find strength, that we become stronger and better. And I really do feel like because of the acknowledgement of my weaknesses, where we both have you got there 8 years ago, I got there the last 2 years, is like, hey, I have to admit that I'm weak, that I am dumb with a smartphone. Therefore, I don't need it because good. My faith and my family are just taking right hooks and left hooks and getting KO'd. Like, and I just can't let that happen anymore. I just had to admit to the fact, like, hey, that's
your phone.
That's my phone, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to cut it off.
This is actually really funny because you were just talking about how you're like, hey, like we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't swing it.
And then it rings. I'm like, oh dang!
And then we pick it up. And then last week,
how was the podcast for you? Can we give the little feedback from?
I was gonna say, I'm totally interrupting Luke to insert this.
Yeah.
But we were laughing because we were like, hey, we should do a recap from last podcast, and I was like, well. I looked at my phone like a dozen times last podcast. And so we were joking about how like my phone needed to be in timeout. And the funny thing is, it's like even for us with dumb phones, we still like that's the reason that we don't have smartphones is because it's so hard to do that honest assessment, to really be honest with yourself, to get vulnerable, to admit that you can't, and to talk about it. Everyone wants to put on this cover, this front that I'm good, I've got this together, I've got this handled, I'm strong, and we don't show our weaknesses in society because society says put up your profile, show the best photos, edit them really well, make sure that you look perfect, and then that's it. Yeah. Or it becomes the other side of things where it's like, I'm an influencer and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, you're turning on a camera to like, it's very exaggerated, but like just like right in that middle ground is just be honest with what you can't do and your weaknesses. And that will become your strength.
Yeah, for sure. Be honest on where you're at, but be clear on where you want to go.
That's absolutely
it's like,
true.
Man, here's where I'm at. Yeah. I suck. I'm weak. I'm very not disciplined. I hear phones and I look at them still. Yeah. But what I'm going to do about it is like I'm going to turn the phone off now because it just rang and I didn't realize my ringer was on.
That's true.
I'm going to realize I missed out on bedtime reading with Shiloh 7 months ago, and I began to like create a new groove on how I don't take certain things with me into rooms because I know if I do, I'll miss out on something really beautiful. And it's like I want to be this person, and so focus more on that. Yeah. But let the past kind of help define and shape you. But yeah, so to the butts though, it really is like I think that there's a lot of people that may hear something like this, and you kind of like sit on the edge of your seat, like, man, that kind of does sound nice. Yeah. It maybe also sound like that kind of seems a little simple or a little boring or a little odd. And it's like, well, it kind of is. But the beautiful thing is like we just want you to be in tune with the reality of the life around you and to make the most of the now and the time that you do have. And so if you do have butts, we're going to try to address some of them.
I'm actually just going to say, I'm going to read these and be like, hey, tell me if this sounds like you.
Yeah,
because these are the questions that I've heard almost verbatim, and we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5. There's probably more than that. There's a lot of butts in the world, but we're going to talk about 5 of them today.
And if you want to submit your butt, then send it on over.
You can
via
email. We've got an email link. You can email us. Here's the funny thing about comments: if you drop anything in the comments, we might see it. We're supposed to be the ones that are like, "Hey, drop it in the comments. We'll check it out."
Maybe not.
I might send me an email, or maybe just like, I don't know.
Yeah, carrier pigeon may get
send
here
a carrier pigeon with a little note attached to it. Okay, questions. Or someone says, not questions, but they say, "Hey, I would, but what about maps? What about navigation?"
Yeah, I use them every day. How am I going to navigate traffic?
To traffic? And my answer to that is usually how did people navigate for thousands and thousands of years before 15 years ago?
Stars.
Get you an astrolabe, point it up there. I think that's what an astrolabe is.
Yeah.
But no, we actually are going to put like practical answers to these questions. So what about maps? How do I navigate? What do we do? So here was my solution for maps.
Yeah, yours is different than mine. So you go first.
Very different. My solution for maps was I got a dumb phone. The next day, I went to Walmart and I bought a Garmin.
Yeah, Garmin's actually connect to those things in the air called satellites. It's pretty crazy. They still work. They're still up there for now.
And you can still buy one from Walmart. I mean, the guy did look at me a little crazy. He was like...
That's the fun part, though.
Like, yeah, but I mean, it was funny to like... Then I got to share with him, hey, well, I just got a dumb phone, and I was looking for a way to still navigate. So, and I mean, it was $120. I got a navigation system. I put it in my phone, in my truck, and I've had it for several years now. And the nice thing is, when someone sends you an exact address, you put it in there, and it takes you there. Yeah. Or if you just need to generally navigate somewhere and you don't know the address, it has a map on it, so you can take a look at the map. You know, and you can figure out where the roadways are. And if you see a road closure, you can look over, and it's a little bit slower, but it's what people did before. I mean, after maps, before smartphones, like right in that like early 2000s mark. So, and then
I remember when we were kids, we like pulled out the map under the car seat and we drove all the way to Florida on that. And we're not even to that point. Like it's way more advanced than that now. Yeah. But like the reality is, you could still do it. I think we just have allowed ourselves to become so dependent, and I think we do desire to be independent, but I think the ease sometimes trumps it. Yeah. And so that's that. Yeah, for me, mine's been kind of a few different things. One, the most recent thing, which has been actually really nice, is my car, the car I just bought, actually has a built-in navigation system. Good. So if you have some Skrilla and you want to buy a car with that, then be my guest. And that's been really helpful. However, most of the times what I do is I just kind of build in margin before I go. Yeah. So I take a look before I go. I realize like, hey, if I'm going anywhere within an hour, I probably have about 5 to 6 turns that I need to remember. Mm-hmm. And then I look and then I go. Yeah. The beautiful thing though is there are some phones, I mean, flip phones and or newer phones. I have the light phone, as I mentioned in the last episode. Alan has the Samsung
Kyocera.
Yeah, that thing. And they have hotspots. So if you have a computer or a iPad, you can hotspot anywhere, and you can pull up maps on the road, and it will also navigate you. So there's been times where I've gotten lost. I took a wrong turn. I had margin. I pulled over. I put in my hotspot on my iPad, and it navigated me to where I needed to go. But what I love about it is it makes you think. It makes you think, like, why am I about to do what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. And that can be teased out to a lot deeper lesson, because I think a lot of times we just don't know why we're doing what we're doing. It's like, man, why am I on Facebook for the 7 millionth time today? I didn't even mean to get here. And like that just doesn't happen when you don't have the ability to be on Facebook. Yeah.
I mean,
while you're driving,
it's
like you shouldn't be on Facebook.
Yeah, you might miss a turn. People are like, "Man, if I did that, I would just miss a turn." I'm like, "Yeah, you missed 1 or 2 turns, and you show up 7 minutes later. You didn't just spend 5 hours on TikTok. Like you didn't just
TikTok.
You know,
time is going, and you just lost a lot of it.
Yeah, and so it's like I think people exaggerate the issues that you're going to run into when they're really not that bad. Yeah. The worst case scenario of all time is that you got lost and you had to ask someone where to go. Or
the good old gas station model.
Yeah, and you go to the gas station, you talk to someone, and it's like, or God forbid, you call someone and say, "Hey, sorry, I missed a turn and I don't know how to get there," and they give you landmarks to navigate like you used to. Like, hey, well, you know that gas station on the corner? You take a left next to it, and then you go down to the second cul-de-sac, and it's those types of things. It sounds kind of wild, but
it sounds inconvenient. Yeah. But like, what would really be inconvenient is if you gave up 12 years of your life.
That's true. I mean, it's more inconvenient.
It's just you got to have a perspective of like, hey, this is gonna be a little challenging. But we even said it last podcast. Like the first day's cool. The first 30 days are hard. 30 onward, you begin to create a habit. Like 30 through 90, you build the habit, and then you forget. So really, it's like after a few months, you just learn it. Like you just know how to navigate.
It's just normal.
You pull out of your drive, not really knowing where you're going, and you'll end up where you need to go on time without issues.
That's true.
The only pushback, and this is like, if your life is really this busy, then like, I'm sorry, that sounds miserable. Like if you have to sit in a traffic jam for a few more minutes, and you don't get to go the back roads. Like that's like the one thing of like there's been some pushback from people like, yeah, but like I use maps because like I want to know where the traffic's at. And it's like, well, you may not like, I don't know how up to date the Garmin is or TomTom is on that, but like hopefully you have enough margin in your life where
if you hit traffic,
you just sit in it.
Yeah.
Or if you're at a coffee shop and there's a line, you just wait for your coffee.
Yeah.
Like it's
that we have a culture. We've become so about instant gratification and so about like instant gratification and avoiding like pauses. We want to get to the next thing as quick as possible, but we've lost the margin to be able to enjoy the patience, enjoy the lack of accomplishing something quickly, and like or like even last time when we were like how powerful silence is. It's like, I mean, just like just next time you are in line somewhere, go in line, sit. I mean, or you go to the doctor and you're in the waiting room. Don't pull your phone out.
Oh yeah.
Sit with your legs crossed and just like look and watch and think. And it's gonna be weird and awkward. You're gonna feel terrible. And then eventually you're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna start noticing that wasn't that bad. That was actually kind of good. And it's good for your spirit to train yourself on how to now not instantly give yourself everything you want when you want it. So
I love the turtle in the elevator. That's my favorite. Like you step in an elevator with someone else and it's just like everyone's going to pull their phone out because something really big just happened in the world. Yeah. Because everyone's on their phone the second people get in the elevator together.
Yeah,
but it's just like, oh, I can't look at you. I can't talk to you. I can't breathe the same air as you. So I'm just going to, but anyways, on to the next butt.
We really went hard on that butt.
Hard, that was a big butt. That's a big one that people don't want to like that have a hard time overcoming. The next one is, hey, I would love to do this, but like how do you take pictures?
Yeah. I think that my recommendation would probably be to buy a camera.
All right, next one. Work.
But seriously, okay, I will keep this one short.
Let's hover over that for a second.
For 1 second. I would, but what about my camera? Buy a camera. You can buy any type of camera. You can buy a really nice camera. You can buy a really tiny camera. You can buy a Polaroid camera that shoots it out. You can buy like the digital cameras that you keep, it can be a pocket one. It can be one you keep in your car. There are literally like 1,000 cameras.
I'd say millions.
Million cameras. I didn't do the research.
I'd say billions.
There are billions of cameras. There are a lot of different ways to take photos. Here's another thing too. If you have an iPhone, let's say you switch over and you still have it and it's totally dead or you keep it in the console of your car. You did this for your first 6 to 8 months before you got something different.
Before I realized I don't need to take as many.
Before you realize you don't.
Cameras.
But I'm saying that you keep it as a device to take a photo with. Like we have iPads and we can pull that out if we really need to take a photo. But it's different. When you make the switch over, you realize that if something is really important, you'll find a way to capture it.
Yeah, and
whether you buy a photo, buy something too.
And it changes how you take photos too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
I'm really good at that. I've done that for 30 years.
No, you're good.
But it changes how you take photos. Like you begin to create this new groove. It's called selfie control.
Oh.
Which is what a lot of people don't have. It's like, I just climbed this Mount Everest and it took me my whole life to prepare for it, and now I'm going to put myself in the middle of the peak and and I'm not going to take in the moment.
You know that I just realized that when you said selfie control, you're talking about like self-control.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's
but
good.
yeah, I thought put that on a shirt and sell it.
That's good.
But you do. You have control, and you begin to realize, well, hey, this beautiful cooked meal of mashed potatoes and meatloaf doesn't probably need to be.
Yeah.
There's not a photo of this that's needed. Like the proof of me eating this should be like there's a little bit of ketchup on my upper lip here because I just ate that.
There you go.
meal. Yeah. But it does. It's like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And just having a camera helps you to like capture it and then get back in the moment, right? Get back in. Other things that we'd recommend too is there are like Alan's phone. Bring it out because I love this noise. Is it off?
It's off. No worries.
Oh dang! Alan's phone like does take a somewhat decent like photo, which is nice. There's also some like the Wise Phone 3 that's coming out. Yeah.
I'm gonna even just show up. It's like it's funny. It's like one of those things where it's like,
oh, it's good. Right? Yeah, I look great. Yeah, great complexion. I look very washed out, which is normal in life. So, but like it really, like a lot of the dumb phones that are coming out, like the Wise Phone 2, it has an incredible camera on it. Like if that's your holdup, there's phones that you can take great. It's like the same camera as an iPhone, and you can send photos. If you can wait till I don't want you to wait till the beginning of the year, but like the Light Phone 3 is going to have a camera. There's all flip phones and old phones have some sort of camera. It just may not be what you're used to and accustomed to, but they still exist.
They still exist, and they get the job done.
They get the job done, yeah.
I think that like what you're kind of getting at is like a camera becomes something different. It's like when you don't have a high def camera in your pocket at all times.
Yeah.
There is actually a beauty in a different way that you navigate life.
Yeah.
And I will say this, like there is one of the things that I guess two of the things that I've learned the most about not having a super great camera in my pocket is one, I didn't need as good of a photo or as many photos of the things that I thought I needed.
Yeah.
So like you had told me about how, my grandma has one photo of her wedding.
One photo of her wedding, and I bet she loves that
She loves that photo. And it's kind of funny because it's like, well, we want a million photos of everything. But it's like, guess what? That photo means a lot to her because she had one of them. And I even like, that's the reason that I love the snap and shoot cameras, the Polar.
You don't know what you get.
People laugh at me, but like I've taken Fujifilm snap and shoots
man.
since my honeymoon.
Shout out Fujifilm.
Fujifilm. But the beauty of that is that I'm snapping 5 to 8 photos per trip. And then at the end of your 30 photos, I've got about 5 vacations worth, and about a third of them didn't turn out good, and then some of them had the fingers on them, but then you have these moments that are super special throughout it. And so that's the first thing I would say is you don't need as many photos. And then two, I think that this is something we haven't even really talked about is most of the time you don't need a photo at all. You just don't need a photo of it. And when I say not even in like the mashed potato moment, but I'm saying even in a moment that is really wonderful, like 2 days ago, my son came in and he brought me this little wooden camera that he had. And he said, Daddy.
Probably about as good a quality as your camera.
It's about as good a quality, same megapixels. Two megapixels. It was 2 squares. But he came up and he said, hey, Daddy, let me take a photo of you and Isla, which is my daughter. And we're sitting there. And I just like almost start crying because it was such a sweet moment. And so then we start smiling and my daughter is just laughing and smiling and Kai's having a good time. And then he said, take one of all of us. And so then I go and I take one of all of us. And we spent 5 minutes taking fake photos, and I was so grateful that it didn't even cross my mind, hey Alan, you should go get the photo to take a video of you taking the photo or a fake photo or anything. I just sat there and I took a mental photo. We actually have this thing we do in our family a lot of times where if something really special happens, I'll like look over at my wife and I'll just go. And
I was like, we did that in our family? What?
No, I'm saying if like me and my wife.
Gotcha. I'm tracking. Yeah.
And so I just think that like sometimes, sometimes we're not going to have an answer that you're going to like, but you just have to get there. And there's going to be a million different things that like you're going to experience that are different than us, but they're gonna be beautiful. You're gonna have these beautiful moments that you get back. So
that's a new groove for sure. Like finding new ways, and that's something we talked about, but not that example specifically. But finding new ways to remember the moment. Like, that's good. Maybe you don't need, like, maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a taste, maybe it's a souvenir, maybe it's something you find, maybe it's journaling about it. I used to be a big journaler, and I want to get back to that, and I have more with a dumbed down phone because I want to I want to stay in a moment, but then I want to be able to reflect on those things. And so I think, like, if we lose one sense of doing something a certain way, then our other senses are aware, right? And there's different ways to remember something. Like I don't even have to see a picture of my grandma's house to walk in and know the smell and to know all the things that make it honestly like a piece of heaven on earth. I feel like it's my favorite place to go. But there's so many things about it, ways for me to take in. I've not once walked into her house and said, I need to pull my phone out right now. It's like I just want to walk in this place and I just want to sit.
I just want to be here.
And I want to be here because I feel like I'm at home. And I think that's what we're kind of getting at. A few other things. These will be a little bit quicker. The next one is, hey, I would love to do this flip phone life or dumb phone life, but I really need like how do you navigate work? Because I need a smartphone for my job.
I'll answer that one because I actually had this period. So I'm 6 years strong with the flip phone, coming up on 6 years.
Yeah, you are. Strong.
Of the 8 years that I started, I had a period. So I had a little blip between I had a 6-year smartphone period. And I had a little blip where I had a flip phone, and it was wonderful. That was the start of my journey. And then I got a job where I did marketing. And so then in my mind, I was operating really healthily, but I was like, oh, well, I need this for work. So I went ahead and went back to one. Yeah. And of course, all the things come back, all of that stuff happens, yada, yada, yada. So ways that the same question happened when we started this company was like, oh, we started this company. Should we, go back to having a smartphone to navigate these things? Mm-hmm. And as a business owner, there's so many things that you can do on an iPhone that everyone thinks, well, this is going to make me more productive. I should do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that the answer actually is for us, is with owning a business, with having a company where you could have this, we've learned that it's actually better to compartmentalize.
Yeah, that's good.
And so for us, if you have the option to do it and your work would just be different, we still think you can get a dumb phone and do it. There's different things that you can do. You can, we have some of these written down. You can batch your emails. So if you need to be more productive, batch your emails at 9 a.m., address them at 1 p.m. after lunch, and then at 4:30 before you leave, look at them again. You've got 3 moments throughout the day. You're looking at your emails. You're addressing them. If you're on your road or like on the road and you...
if
you're on your road, metaphorically, if you're on a road and you're away from the office and you have your phone with you that hotspots, you can do what we did with maps. You can pull over and you can hotspot to your device if you really need to get to something. You can go to a coffee shop, hotel, restaurant. You can go
I hear they have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, all of these places that have Wi-Fi, everything that you can do, majority of the time you can do it from a computer device.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. This is the other. So that's the answer is it is possible to do it for work. Yeah. If your life is a little bit more inconvenienced and you need to make more margin, that becomes more an excuse of like, you don't have to have it for work. You just want to have it for your work to make it more simple. And I think that it's like, that's a different question than, no, I have to have it for work.
Yeah.
There's this app that I have to have. I have to do this. I have to be able to navigate. If that's where you're at, I think
you quit your job.
Yeah, I think Luke says quit your job. I say
I think that job's bad for you. I'm kidding. No, I don't. I don't funny. Say that. But
I mean, you quit your job or you get a second phone. Yeah. And that also, it sounds kind of wild because you're like, well, I don't want a second bill. I don't want to pay for a second device. I'm telling you, I've heard people do this before, and they if you have a second device, you spend the money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
If you don't want to spend the money, somehow find our phone number. I don't know how you will. 502-598-1549. And call us and we'll buy it for you.
That's true. I mean, I guess. I mean, you just offered that. That was Luke's phone number. He'll buy it for you.
I will buy it for you on Alan's credit card.
Yeah, that sounds good. But buy a work phone and buy a burner phone or a dumb phone for yourself for your personal time, and then have that smartphone device for work and treat it like a computer. You open up your backpack to get your work phone when you're at work. When you're done with your work, you put it back in and you go.
And you leave it.
And you leave it. And so it's like, and I know that some people have certain circumstances where they really do need it and they're on call and they're like, a night nurse or night doctor, whatever. We're not speaking to the unique situations. We're speaking to the vast majority of people who actually can and have the butts about it. So that's the work thread. We'll get into the last two. These are a little bit more chill and simple.
I'll hit this one here.
Okay.
Hey, I'd love to do this, but how do you do group threads and group chats and all that stuff? So the cool thing about group messaging, this wasn't a capability for a long time, but now on like flip phones or even different devices that are more dumb phone like, you can get group messaging. I can get it on the iPhone. You can get it on the Nokia. And it's great. So the reality is there's not really much of a holdback there. If iMessaging is really important to you or you need it, actually Alan and I both still have that set up.
On our computers.
On our computers and tablets through iCloud. So sometimes it really is easy. Like after this podcast, I will airdrop some stuff to Alan, and that's going to be way easier than trying to find another way around it.
Yeah.
So I think that is like a great solution for people. You can FaceTime on that, but you're doing it not from a phone that's in your pocket while you're driving. You're doing it from a desk at an office or at home. So there is that. So remembering just like, tech it's not a bad thing. It's just like when you feel like, I can't make this decision because of this, and I always have to have the ability to do it right then, right now. So that's that. I'd say also you just have that reminder that like messages and group messages and things like that, if you have the capability of it, the one thing you may notice is that it takes a little bit more time. Like if you're using a computer or an iPad for an iCloud, like you may need to do that in the morning or in the evenings, and like that message may just have to breathe for a few hours.
Yeah.
And that's completely okay.
Yeah, you're not going to carry your computer around on hotspot 24/7.
Yeah.
You're going to basically send the message. You're going to treat it like iMessage just becomes email if it's on an iPad or on a computer.
So a message can breathe for a few minutes, but your marriage may not be able to if it's constantly getting beat out by the phone. And so like you just have to you just have to prioritize the things that matter most. Like good. Bobby Joe wanting to go do something isn't as important as your wife who needs you to be present in the moment. And that is my life, to be honest. The amount of times I picked something else over what was most important, I hate to admit it, I did. And I had to eventually just kind of cut that out.
Yeah. And then the other portion of group messaging that's just funny is that you're going to get people who mention the green bubble, that you like green bubble.
Nothing like a discolored bubble.
And they're going to like not put you in a group text because you have a green bubble or whatever. It's like, it's a group message, it's a green bubble, and if your friends are not going to include you in a message because you have a green bubble, that already tells me enough about your friends. Because it's like...
You know what you do? You find new friends.
Yeah, well, no, but it's like
Just friends, kidding. Keep those friends.
I just got left out of... I had this phone 6 years ago. Really, it was like a couple years ago that group messaging really started to go to the dumb phone devices.
Yeah.
And guys, I just wasn't on group messages. And guess what? It was fine. And if I really had an important group message that I needed to be a part of, I asked the people if they would set up a group me and I would have SMS texts sent to the group me thread. And it's like, and if people care about you enough, you're not that big of an inconvenience for you to set that up. It is possible. Okay, we're approaching an hour, so we're getting close on this. The last one is music. Yeah, that's what you do when you... But seriously, okay, people would say, hey, I would love to get that, but like I love my Spotify. I don't know how I'm going to listen to music. How am I going to listen to my podcast in the car? And we have multiple just like practical things for that. We have a USB drive. A lot of cars have USBs or USB-Cs. You download your music on your computer. You put it in your car. You download your podcast on your computer. You put it in your car. Yeah. That's it. Old MP3 devices, they work the same way as the USB, but that's what we used to do. We used to just like have an MP3. We would download the music on there.
Get a cable.
And get a cable, put it in there. You can also think in your car. Like you can you can not have music.
Just be.
You can, I actually use I drive like a lot of times, a couple times a week. I'm driving about
hours.
Let's see, about an hour 45 one way and an hour 45 back. And I listen to music rarely. I do listen to music, but it is rare because I use that time to think, I use that time to pray, and I use that time to catch up with some people if I need to make a phone call to a friend that I haven't talked to in a while. And so it's like, it's okay to think and pray and beatbox and sing and do other things other than just ingesting content when you're driving.
I think that's really good. Like there should never be a day if you have a commute for work where you get home and the first thing that you do, instead of like addressing your family or your kids or your roommates or whatever your living situation is, to jump on the phone again. Like commutes are the best time to catch up with people.
That's true.
Via phone call, not via text message from your crotch.
That's true.
Last thing you can do, you could just listen to the radio.
Oh yeah, that's true. You can, which it's
there's
a crazy
thing called the FM and the AM radio.
Every car is equipped with a magic music box that plays music for you, and of course you can't cater specifically pick, your indie artists that you like, which I do too. But it's like, listen to the radio. There's plenty of stations. I was listening to AM radio the other day, and I was like, man, this is where we at in life. And it's funny, but it was actually kind of like enjoyable because it was like when and this is to your 90-day comment, once you approach the 90-day mark, and once you've made it to the spot where it's normal and it's healthy, you just start to to really enjoy and dive into like deeper portions of understanding in all these different like ancillary categories. So that's the last one with music. And I think that's the end of the butts. But yeah, I mean, to kind of wrap all of this up and even the talk, like
put a bow on it.
To put a bow on all of this, that is it's kind of one of the most heartbreaking things for me whenever I talk with people, because I had mentioned last podcast that I felt like I was talking to an audience of none for 6 years. And it is heartbreaking for me whenever I talk to people and I see them really struggling and really looking at my device and being like, man, I really would love to do that. That would be so healthy for me, but I'm going to enter in these different things, these excuses, these things that when they tell them to me, like, they seem like barriers, but to me, it's just it's a speed bump. Yeah. I'm like, hey, everything you're mentioning to me, you're talking about it like it's the Great Wall of China. I'm telling you, it's a speed bump. It's a speed bump. Step over the speed bump, and then that's it. And so, like, I think for us,
we can build it up to be something bigger than it really is.
Yeah, and we don't want to, just don't make a mountain out of a molehill. These are molehills. You can squash them. And I think for us, as we kind of get into the remainder of however many podcasts we do, we can talk into some of these more in detail. But I think that the concept of this, the whole purpose of this podcast would be know that it's possible. If this can encourage you to make that step to know, legit get a hold of us. If you drop a comment or you send an email to us, we will
go back and listen and find find my number.
Rewind and find his number. Text or call, because like our whole purpose of this is we want people to feel free and we want to help people. Yeah. So please get a hold of us, and we would love to help navigate you through what that looks like. So
the other two things where we're supposed to do that thing where we give people things to look at and shout out. Like I really would just recommend the two things we already said. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry book. Yeah. I'd grab that, snag it, buy a copy, ebook it, and then watch The Social Dilemma. I think it's a good eye-opening.
That is good.
It's a good eye-opening thing for people to watch if this kind of pulls your heartstrings a bit.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's it for this episode specifically. Yeah. Next week, I think we're going to be talking from selfies to selflessness, kind of shifting the focus from me mentality to we mentality, something along that lines. We'll probably change the title of that before it gets here, because that was like alphabet soup trying to get that one out. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to whatever we call this thing. But yeah,
the Flippin Awesome Podcast, episode 2. Love you guys. See ya. Peace.